Tonight, COVID compromise.
If you can't find bipartisanship on COVID-19, I don't know where you can find it.
President Biden's White House meeting with Republicans, attempting to find middle ground for struggling Americans.
We have to act now. There's no time for any delay.
And as more contagious strains of the virus take over, the effort to bolster vaccine confidence from black pastors. Plus, pre-trial drama. Former President Trump shuffles his legal team just days ahead of his second impeachment trial. And state of emergency. Snow, ice, and power outages blanket the country in the latest winter weather blast. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. And welcome to Faith Nation, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. A big stimulus to boost the American economy. That's President Biden's vision, but it comes with a nearly $2 trillion price tag, and many Republicans think that's too much. Tonight, a bipartisan meeting at the White House aims to bring the two sides together. We want you to know what's in that proposal. Here's CBN's Caitlin Burke with a look at what it could mean for the economy and your wallet.
President Joe Biden is preparing to spend big. His goal? To rescue Americans and the U.S. economy from the COVID-19 pandemic. The question remains, is he spending too much?
They cannot watch people lose their jobs, and we have to act. We have to act now.
The Biden administration's nearly $2 trillion rescue package would pump money into vaccine deployment, reopening schools, funding state and local governments, and of course, putting money directly into the hands of Americans. It's a steep price tag, but Biden says the nation can't afford anything less.
I know what I just described does not come cheaply, but failure to do so will cost us dearly.
Economists agree getting out of the pandemic is the first step towards economic recovery. Where they don't agree begins from that point on. By some estimates, Biden has proposed close to $11 trillion in long-term spending plans, investing in healthcare, infrastructure, energy, and education over the next decade.
President Biden promises massive new spending, most of which, frankly, is the proper priority of state governments. So he wants to expand education spending and transportation spending. But that's why we have state governments. We don't need the federal government increasing spending on that.
Those are all spaces where we have lacked adequate investment for a long time. Not just 4 years, longer than that. You need to try to make up for the investments that have been neglected over time. Those are specific areas of spending that I do think it's important to do.
A third of that new spending would be courtesy of more than $3.5 trillion in new taxes, including reversing Trump's tax cuts for large corporations and high-earning families, along with some new taxes. Critics say the tax hikes would hurt the economy, including many smaller businesses, at a time when we can't afford it.
President Biden wants to raise taxes not to reduce the deficit, but to increase spending. So I think this would be a death spiral for the economy. Higher taxes would damage growth, and that would push debt ever higher compared to the size of the economy.
Chris Edwards, director of tax policy studies at the Cato Institute, predicts it would send big business back overseas.
Big corporations, they don't have to locate in America. If you're building electric cars or you're building semiconductors, you can locate your new factory anywhere. You don't have to invest in the United States. So by raising the corporate tax rate, you'll be driving those new factories and facilities overseas. And ultimately, that is bad for American workers.
Lawrence Kotlikoff, a professor of economics at Boston University, disagrees. He says there are incentives that can lure businesses to invest in the U.S.
That's called 100% expensing. You may also have heard of accelerated depreciation. These are ways to say, look, you, Caitlin, are investing in the U.S., you're going to have to pay a high tax rate. But on the other hand, we're going to give you some money up front.
Some economists also warn that Biden's tax increases will trickle down to the average American. If economic growth slows and businesses don't grow as quickly, the American worker won't make as much money and will end up with a lower standard of living. The almost $28 trillion national debt is another major concern. Austin Goolsbee, a former economic advisor to President Obama and current advisor to Biden, says raising taxes is how we begin to address our debt.
It's going to involve more revenue. It's going to involve tax rates going back to something like the historic rates and historic levels, not the depressed levels that we've seen in the last three and a half years.
Critics say only a decrease in spending will make a difference.
The way to chip away at the federal government debt is simply to lower the growth rate in spending or freeze spending for a few years while the economy recovers. That way we can get this deficit on a downward path.
Biden's economic policies will have to make it through Congress. Budget bills, including tax bills, need 51 votes to pass in the Senate. So each Democrat will have to back any legislation that comes through, or it will need bipartisan support. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. And here with us now, Mark Hamrick, Washington Bureau Chief and Senior Economic Analyst at Bankrate. Mark, welcome back to Faith Nation.
Good to be with you. Thank you, Wendy.
Well, before we get to the specifics of the stimulus, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office forecasts that the U.S. economy will grow by 4.6% this year. Mark, does that in any way undercut the need for more stimulus?
No, I think there are plenty of people out there who are trying to undercut that without any facts, as well as those who do. The reality is that the unemployment rate is seen still elevated, even under this CBO nonpartisan projection that runs out several years. And that includes that the unemployment rate will be as high as 5% in 2022, or a little over a year from now. The other part is that it also forecasts that employment, meaning the number of jobs in the economy, will not get back to pre-pandemic levels until 2024. So, yes, GDP is something important to watch, but that doesn't speak to the success or lack thereof for individual households and the many people who remain unemployed as we speak.
All right, good to know. Mark, as President Biden meets with Republicans over their competing plans, can you give us the broad strokes on where they differ?
Well, it's really on the size of the package, first of all. I think there's a large number of Republicans who just don't want to be associated with another large, costly package, so to speak. And so, you look at the Biden plan, that's about $1.9 trillion as proposed. This package that is brought forward by the 10 GOP lawmakers is about a third of that. And really, I would say broadly, it has less in the way of unemployment assistance, whether you look at the timelines or the extent, and also lowering the threshold for incomes for individuals to qualify for all of that. So there is a big difference, and it's going to be interesting in the coming days to see whether the president decides basically to go it alone or indeed to try to perhaps split the difference. Of course, there's going to be a problem even trying to compromise with the Republican package within the Democratic Party, but also among Republicans as well.
All right. So President Biden says Americans, they need the relief right now. How do the two sides come together?
Well, the devil's in the details. It was brought up in the White House news briefing today, a quotation that was used by Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, who said, "Winners make policy and losers go home." The question is, do you really need to be looking for bipartisan agreement, or do you simply do what you need to do to pass the legislation? And, I don't know what the optimal answer is there. Obviously, anything that has more support, that gives the appearance of having broader political underpinnings is better. But at the end of the day, I question how many Americans are going to look back on this period and know how many senators voted in favor.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Bankrate's Mark Hamrick, thanks as always for your time and perspective.
Thank you.
Former President Trump's second impeachment trial is set to begin next week, but after his latest team of attorneys quit, the big question is, who will defend him? For that answer, we turn to CBN's White House correspondent, Ben Kennedy. Ben.
Well, Wendy, as you were talking about, after Trump lost his 5 attorneys. He hired a new legal team to represent him. In fact, his team made the announcement via email, writing that trial lawyers David Schoen and Bruce Castor Jr. will head his impeachment defense legal team, bringing national profiles and significant trial experience in high-profile cases to the effort. The email also notes that Schoen has been working with Trump for a while now on a legal strategy, and also his team calls this impeachment in the Senate, quote, totally unconstitutional and bad for our country. Wendy?
Ben, the House impeached Trump on January 13th on a single article for incitement of insurrection. So why the delay in the Senate?
Well, Wendy, Republicans wanted to give Trump time to prepare for this trial and also to arrange a legal team, which we just talked about. He finally did. But Democrats allowed it because it also gave them time to really focus on Biden's agenda. We heard Hamrick talking about the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief package. The Biden administration has really put combating the pandemic on the forefront. And by allowing this 2-week delay, it gave Democrats the time they needed to really focus on Biden's agenda. But their focus also does remain on this impeachment trial. In fact, the House impeachment managers will be submitting their legal briefs by tomorrow. So Wendy will be getting a bit of an update in the next 24 hours.
All right. We look forward to that. Thank you so much, Ben. And joining us now, David Brody, CBN chief political analyst. David, good to see you.
Good to see you, Wendy.
All right, David, 8 days away from President Trump's historic second impeachment trial. How do you interpret this last-minute shuffling of the legal team?
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, you know, Donald Trump has always been a human etch-a-sketch, and he has done things at a haphazard pace, and he usually veers left and then veers right. So it doesn't surprise me that he's changing lawyers at the last moment. Look, I don't think it's going to make any difference ultimately, because here's the bottom line. Can I just cut to the chase? I'm sure you want me to cut to the chase, which is simply this. There's no way there's going to be 67 votes to convict this president. So that's just the end of it, which makes you think to yourself, why in the world are Democrats even doing this? Because the whole point of doing this is to somehow, possibly, some way, maybe about a month ago, they thought they could get to 67 votes to convict Trump, and therefore he could never run again for president. But they're not going to get that. So therefore, if they're not going to get it, what's the point? There is no point at this point. Absolutely none.
David, during his first impeachment trial, President Trump had quite the legal lineup. Why does it appear he's having a harder time finding high-caliber attorneys this time around?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, there is a school of thought that, you know, a lot of folks right now don't want to go down that election fraud storyline that Donald Trump was talking about for a couple of months after the election. That's possibly one scenario. But, you know, look, ultimately, look, I've talked to, I'm trying to think of his name, Alan Dershowitz, who doesn't feel like there's a need for him to get involved in it. And Jay Sekulow has already been there, done that. And so, you know, there's some other folks as well. So I don't know. I think it's probably more that, you know, this doesn't seem to have the appeal, if you will, of a first impeachment trial. You know, always the second time around is usually not as thrilling.
Yeah, it'll be a great opportunity for whoever who does step up, though. All right, now, turning to COVID relief. The White House plan and the Senate Republican proposal seem worlds apart. But as you know, David, President Biden emphasized unity and bipartisanship both before and after the campaign. Will this be his first real test on that promise as president?
Yes, and it's a huge test, and it's a huge opportunity for President Biden. As you said, Wendy, he talked about unity forever for the last year and a half. So here it is. 10 Republican senators, Wendy, going to walk into the Oval Office and say, hey, President Biden, we've got a deal for you. Let's meet halfway, or, you know, some sort of compromise. In other words, unity. Why don't you take it? It's a great opportunity for him. Here's the reason he might not take it. AOC, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, the left, they control the House, the Senate, and the White House. So they figure they've got to get as much done with controlling all three branches of government. The problem, Wendy, is that they might control all three branches razor thin in the House. It's a 50-50 deadlock pretty much in the Senate. And so it's not as easy as it looks.
What about Senator Manchin? He's always the one to watch. How's he going on this?
No, that's a good question. And look, Senator Manchin is in that power center in the Senate. About 6 senators or so that are going to control. 3 on the Republican side, 3 on the Democrat side are going to control what legislation gets through. Because, you know, it's interesting. We've heard a lot about budget reconciliation, this idea that Democrats only need 50 votes if they want to push anything through. Technically, that's true. But the last time I checked, Joe Manchin's a Democrat, which means the Democrats are going to need his vote, along with Kyrsten Sinema, another center-left senator, and John Tester as well, another center-left Democrat. So there's no guarantee that they're going to get all 50 Democrats to pass through something on budget reconciliation. So there is a gamble here. It would make sense for Joe Biden to take the unity lap and say, I worked with Republicans, it's what I said I was going to do, and then go ahead and do it. But you know what? It's Washington. It's the swamp. It's dirty. It's messy. You never know.
Take the unity lap. Let's hope he listened. All right, David Brody, CBN Chief Political Analyst, thanks for your insights.
Thanks, Wendy.
Well, stay with us. We got scenes from our snowy nation's capital. Look at that and much more coming up next.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back to Faith Nation. Well, parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic are digging out this evening as a winter storm throws a mean 1-2 punch of ice and snow. 110 million Americans are in the storm's path as it barrels up the coast, and for some, it's the biggest snowstorm in years. As Faith Nation anchor Jenna Browder shows us, that's certainly the case for the Washington, D.C. area.
The winter weather is not letting up here in the nation's capital. This rain and sleet has continued most of the day, and for some, that is perfectly okay. It's the first significant snowfall for the area in nearly 2 years, drawing hundreds of people to the National Mall for a massive snowball fight.
Being able to come out here like this and have fun and get out for a little bit after being trapped inside for a while, it's great.
And at the National Zoo, giant pandas are getting in on the fun too, sliding down a hill head first, belly up. The storm barreling up the East Coast has 110 million Americans in its chilly grip. Forecasters warning of dangerous conditions across the region through Tuesday, with some areas in New York and New Jersey facing blizzard-like conditions and up to 2 feet of heavy snow. New York City public schools switched to remote learning today. COVID vaccination appointments rescheduled. And for those who are venturing out in this, crews are out plowing and spreading salt by the tons.
We will be loud and we will be present.
More than 250 crashes reported in Virginia alone. This fire truck flipped over, but no serious injuries. And here in Washington, we are still under a winter weather advisory. The snow and sleet should let up tomorrow. Wendy?
Thanks, Jenna. Stay warm. Well, up next, the PR push for COVID-19 vaccines. A prominent pastor joins the nation's top scientific experts to calm the skeptics. His message after the break.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Today, Dr. Anthony Fauci said without global vaccination, COVID-19 could hold a permanent place in the population the same way HIV does. Even though we're learning some vaccines aren't as effective against variants of the virus, Fauci says they are still good at preventing serious illness or death. CBN News has reported on the reluctance of some to get the vaccine, especially in the African American community. Charlene Aaron shows us what one prominent pastor is doing to change hearts and minds.
In an effort to better inform the African American community about the vaccine, Bishop T.D. Jakes brought in big-name experts for an online event called Conversations with America, Understanding the COVID-19 Vaccine. During the nearly hour-long discussion, Jakes asked questions such as whether these experts had any angst about the vaccine over the long term. Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, the lead scientist on the coronavirus research team, didn't hesitate.
Absolutely no angst at all. You know, one of the things that I think is largely forgotten throughout this is that the first phase 1 clinical trial actually started on March the 16th, which was almost 10 months ago. And so from those people, they've been followed since then, and there are no outcomes for long-term adverse outcomes. Long-term side effects are not something to be worried about.
Much of the concern among Blacks dates back to the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, a 40-year government study involving hundreds of Black men. The men, mostly poor sharecroppers suffering from syphilis, were monitored yet not treated by government health officials. Many died, went blind, or experienced other severe health problems. Dr. Anthony Fauci admitted the skepticism is understandable.
It's a shameful history that we have to just deal with. So whenever I talk to my African American friends and colleagues about getting vaccinated, you always have to show respect for their skepticism and then try to get them to understand why it is safe, it is effective, and it is good not only for your own health, but for your families and your community.
Jakes explained while hard-hit communities of color desperately need the vaccine, access and distribution may be a problem. He suggested using churches and other faith-based groups as a solution.
Is there any thought about getting medical professionals to work through faith-based entities within those local communities where they could go to churches, for instance, and have medical physicians there that could administer the vaccine? Because many of our communities are in food deserts and places like that where they can't get the vaccine.
You could do it by community centers, churches. You mentioned, Bishop, is very important. Faith-based organizations getting involved, but also mobile units to go out into those communities which are not readily accessible.
In the meantime, Jakes says while his conversation provides people with education and knowledge about the shot, he also wishes to offer hope to those affected by the pandemic. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thanks, Charlene. Up next, we'll show you something we haven't seen at the White House in years.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Experience the excitement of the 2021 Super Bowl breakfast.
Get ready.
Featuring NFL legends Tony Dungy, Anthony Munoz, Benjamin Watson, and more.
You know, I just closed my eyes and said a Hail Mary.
Along with the presentation of the prestigious Bart Starr Award. It's an hour of great stories you won't want to miss. Saturday, February 6th at 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. And Sunday before the big game at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on the CBN News Channel.
Well, a lot of the nation's capital is shut down because of the winter weather, but not the South Lawn of the White House. President Biden's granddaughter, Naomi, posted this pic on Twitter of first dogs Champ and Major playing on the South Lawn. The two German Shepherds are the first dogs to live at the White House since the Obama administration, and Major made history. He's the first ever sheltered dog to live at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's going to do it for us.